A very good morning to everyone. Today we are continuing with the chapter number 4 of history. In the previous class we have studied that how did tribal groups live. Some of them were jhum cultivators, some of them were hunter and gatherers, some herd animals, and some have their settled life. Today we will learn how did the colonial rule affect tribal life. Now, today we will study what happened to the tribal chief, the shifting cultivators, and what were the problems faced by the tribal groups during the British rule. Starting with what happened to the tribal chiefs. Before the arrival of Britishers, the tribal chiefs had their own importance. They had some economic power and control over the territories under them. At some places, they had their own policy and rules. But during the British rule, they lost their administrative powers and they were forced to follow British rules. They had to pay tribute to the Britishers. Tribute here means taxes. And also, they were not able to execute some of their traditional functions. They were forced to discipline their tribal groups as per the Britishers. Now, what problems were faced by shifting cultivators? The Britishers gained control over the forests and they view that the shifting cultivators should settle down at a fixed place. Why they wanted them to settle down? Because it is very difficult to manage those who are moving from one place to another after a period of time. So they thought that it is easy to rule those who live at a fixed place. So they wanted them to work as peasant cultivator as it was easy to control them and administer the settled peasants. The Britishers wanted regular inflow of income, so they measured the land and fixed the revenue also. They wanted that there should be a regular income for them, so when they provided the fixed land to the shifting cultivators, they fixed their revenue also for the payment. And the right over the lands were defined. Some of the peoples were declared owners and some of them become tenants. Means owners will receive money from the tenants and then give taxes to the Britishers. In short, Britishers want their fixed income and they want to have a proper control over the shifting cultivators as well. Now, was the effort of Britishers to settle down these jhum cultivators successful? Answer is no, and the following are the reasons for that. Settled flow cultivation is not easy for everyone because in some areas water is scarce and soil is also dried. So it was very difficult for the jhum cultivators to plow that particular land. Therefore, jhum cultivators of northeast insisted on shifting cultivation. Means they were protesting Britishers and they were not following their rules of settle down at one place, and they continued with their shifting cultivation. The Britishers, after facing so many revolts from jhum cultivators, they had to allow them to continue with the practice of some patches of forest land. Britishers also make some forest law which have their great impact on the life of tribal groups. Let's see how. Actually, Britishers gained control over all the forests and declared them as state property. And if it is state property, Britishers also make some rules and regulations regarding that. And you all know that the life of tribal groups was directly connected to the forest, so it had a great impact on their life. What the Britishers did, they declared some of the forest as a reserve forest because they want timber from those particular forests. In these forests, people were not allowed to move freely, and everything was banned. Means jhum cultivators cannot collect fruits, they cannot hunt animals, and they cannot do any kind of activity in those particular reserved forests. Many were therefore forced to move to other areas in search of food and work and their livelihood. These were some effects of a forest law on the jhum cultivators. But they have these forest laws has affected the Britishers as well. Let's see how. Now, when the Britishers stopped the tribal people from living inside the forest, they faced a problem. The problem was, from where would the forest department get its labor to cut trees for railway sleepers and to transport logs? Means now the problem was this, that uh, when the forest department needs labor and nobody will be there, so where it will get labor from? For the for cutting around the trees and for transporting those logs, and to also to make railway sleepers. So colonial officials, means Britishers, came up with an idea. They decided that they would give jhum cultivator a small patch of land in the forest and allow them to cultivate. But the condition was that those who lived in the villages would have to provide labor to the forest department and look after the forest. Means Britishers came up with this idea that they will provide a small patch of land to the jhum cultivators for their cultivation, and they will allow them to live in the forest. But the condition will be that whenever the forest department need laborers, then they have to provide their laboring to them, right? So in many regions, the forest department established forest village for regular supply of cheap laborers. But were everyone happy with this? No. Some of the tribes were not happy with these restrictions, so they started disobeying rules, which sometimes resulted in revolts. Sangma revolt. Songram Sangma revolt of Assam in 1906 is one such example, and one more revolt was there, that was the forest satyagraha. Now let's see what was the problem with the trade. During 19th century, many moneylenders and traders start dealing with the forestmen by buying a forest product, and sometimes they provide them cash loans and asking them to work for wages. Means moneylenders and traders start dealing with forestmen. They often come to forest and deal with them. How they deal with them? By purchasing forest products and also by providing them some loans. And sometimes also they ask them to work for wages. This took some time for the tribes to understand how they got trapped into the vicious cycle of never-ending loans. Means loan keep on increasing on them, and they got in that unending cycle of loans. Now let us consider a case of silk growers. In 18th century, Indian silk was in demand in European markets. You all know that Britishers came to India for the trading, and they purchased goods from India at cheap prices and sell them at the higher prices in European market. So they understood that Indian silk quality is very fine and it is highly valued. So they start exporting them from India at very high quantity. Now, as the market expanded, the East India Company officials tried to encourage silk producers to meet the growing demand. You all know that demand of silk was growing in the European market. So, Britishers start encouraging silk producer in India to grow them so that they can meet the demand of European market. Let us understand this better with the example of Hazaribagh. Hazaribagh is a place in Jharkhand where Santhals were asked to rear cocoons for the European traders, as Indian silk was in high demand in world for its superfine quality. Means European traders told Santhals to produce cocoons, to rear cocoons for them, because Indian silk was in high demand in the world and also in the European countries. So you all know that Britishers came to India for the trading purpose. So what they actually do, they purchase silk at cheap prices and sell that in the European market at high prices. And because of its fine quality, silk was already in a very high demand overall the world. The agents used to pay them 3 to 5 rupees for 1,000 cocoons, which was sold for 5 times the price at Gaya and Burdwan. Means the agents, those who were dealing with the Santhals on behalf of Britishers, they pay them only 3 rupees or 5 rupees for 1,000 cocoons, and they sell these cocoons at 5 times the price. 5 times the price means if they buy it for 3 rupees, they sell them at 15 rupees, and if they are buying it for 5 rupees, they sell them at 25 rupees. Means much more prices they were getting after selling this. You can see that the tribals were earning less and the middlemen were making huge profits out of this. These were the reasons why tribals believe that these traders and moneylenders and the Britishers, they all are their enemies, and that's why they call them DQs, means outsiders. Now the search for work. The plight of tribal groups means the condition of those tribal groups who had to go far away from their families in search of work was really very worse. They had to work either in tea gardens or mines, because at that time of 19th century, tea plantations started coming up and the mining was also becoming an important industry. So tribals has to work in tea plantation of Assam or the coal mines of Jharkhand. And you all know that work at mine was very difficult because it sometimes proved hazardous to their life because of low level of oxygen in those mines. But one more thing that was very painful, that the contractor used to pay them very less and they did not allow them to return to their homes. Now if we consider their condition, it was really very miserable. So through 19th and 20th century, many tribes which were against the taxes, rule, exploitations of the Britishers rose against Britishers and enter into various movements against them at various places, such as Kols rebelled in 1831 to 32, Santhals rose a revolt in 1855, the Bastar rebellion in central India broke out in 1910, and the Worli revolt in Maharashtra in 1914. The movement that Birsa led, that was the Munda revolt, was also one of such movements. If you remember, we have started this chapter with Birsa only. Coming to his details, Birsa Munda was born in 1870s in the house of poor father. He grew up grazing sheep and dancing in local akhadas. He was forced by poverty. His family had to move from place to place in search of work. And during his teenage, he experienced many things, such as he had heard tales of Munda uprising of the past and also saw the leaders of his community urging the people to revolt. They talked of the golden age when the Mundas had been free of the oppressions of DQs. Means he has heard tales of that time also, when Munda tribe was an individual tribe and no other outsiders, means like Britishers, they were never forcing them, and he had heard how his ancestors and how the leaders of his community urged their people to revolt against the Britishers. Also, he had heard the tales of Golden Age, when Mundas were not exploited by DQs and they all were free to move anywhere, and how the actual tribal groups lived. Munda tribes saw themselves as a descendant of the original settlers of the regions, means those who have originally found that particular region and settled there. Munda tribe consider themselves as the descendant, means अपने आप को उसके descendant से समझते थे, यानी वंशज अपने आप को consider करते थे. And he also noted that they all were fighting for their own land. He had heard that how the leaders had reminding the people that they need to win their kingdom back, and in missionary school also he had heard that Mundas could regain their rights only if when they leave their bad habits. He had also spent some time under the Vaishnav preachers, means those who worship Lord Vishnu and began to value the importance of purity. Means he was inspired by that Vaishnav preachers also, and he also understood the importance of purity. A feeling of regaining his rights started cultivating in him. Means he understood that we should get our rights back, we should get our land back from these Dakyus, and therefore he started urging his people for following things. Means what he has understood, the Munda tribes can regain their freedom if when they leave or when they give up some of their bad habits. First, he urged Mundas to give up drinking liquor, clean their villages, and stop believing in witchcraft. Witchcraft means jadoo tona. Matlab, he was urging his peoples that they should give up liquor and they should clean their villages and stop believing in all kind of these witchcrafts. Birsa turned against landlords and missionaries as they were the outsiders. He also turned against landlords because he felt that they are exploiting them by taking the products at low prices and selling them at the high prices, and they all were outsiders. Now in 1895, he urged the tribe to recover their glorious past. Means he have heard many stories about his glorious past and glorious past of his tribal group. So he keep urging the tribe to recover their glorious past, where Mundas lived a good life, where they practiced cultivation, planted trees and orchards, and lived honestly. Birsa wanted his men to live that life again, where there was peace and honesty everywhere. He wanted to keep missionaries and landlords, Britishers out of his region and wanted to establish his own Raj. His own Raj in the sense he wanted to establish the tribal group's Raj again. This all worried the Britishers. As we have already read that he was gaining popularity among his own tribes and in other tribes also. So they decided to act against it and to curb it down. So the Britishers arrest Birsa in 1895. Means the way he was urging people to gain their own popularity again, and he was encouraging them to protest against the Britishers. So Britishers arrested Birsa in 1895 so that they can curb this all protest. And in 1897, he was released, and after his release, he started touring all the villages to gather support of all the peoples. He symbolized Britishers as Ravan and urged people to destroy them in order to establish his own kingdom. Targeted many churches and police stations and destroyed them as they belonged to Dakyus. Means all the followers of Birsa started targeting all the churches and police stations that were made by Britishers, and they destroyed them as they considered it belonging to the Dakyus. They also raised a white flag as a symbol of Birsa Raj. It was all going good, but unfortunately in 1900 Birsa died due to cholera and the movement somehow came to an end. But this movement was relevant for two reasons. First, it forced the colonial government to make laws so that the land of the tribal could not be taken away easily by the Dakyus. And it showed the capacity of the tribes as well to protest and show their anger against the injustice, and they did this by inventing their own ways and symbol. So you can say that movement was relevant because it shows the capacity of the tribal people also, that they are capable enough to fight against the Britishers to establish their own Raj, and also they forced the British government to stop making the unjust rules against the tribal groups. This is it with the chapter. Thank you. Have a nice day. As this is a part of your holiday homework and a project also, I am not going to discuss about their question answers and keywords. God bless you all. Enjoy your holidays.